February 3rd, Israel launched its ground and air assault on Gaza. The Israeli soldiers were equipped with special night fighting technology. Hamas couldn't even see them, let alone fight them. So, what did happen in Gaza? In fact, we have a fairly clear picture from what one might call unimpeachable sources, namely the Israeli soldiers who were in Gaza. After the 22 days, they gave public testimony to what they experienced. And here's what they had to say. Soldier, there was nothing there, ghost towns, except for some livestock, nothing moved. Soldier, most of the time it was boring. There were really not too many events. Soldier, I did not see one single Arab the whole time we were there, that whole week. Soldier, everyone was disappointed about not engaging anyone. Soldier, usually we did not see a living soul, except for our soldiers, of course, not a soul. Soldier, go ahead, ask the other soldiers how often they encountered combatants in Gaza. Nothing, no one. Soldier, there was supposed to be a tiny resistance force upon entry, but there just wasn't anyone. There were no battles in Gaza. There was no fighting in Gaza. There was no enemy in the field in Gaza, at any rate, no visible enemy. There was no tangling with the foe. But that's only half of the story. For the other half, if I can give you a homework assignment, it's been some time since I've been in a classroom, so I'll take advantage of being in a grade school and give you all an assignment. All you have to do is go to your computers and enter in your Google search the words breaking the silence, breaking the silence. And if you enter those words, what will come up on your screen is one of the collections of testimonies by Israeli soldiers. And then enter under the search function the word insane, insane. And if you enter under the search function the word insane, it'll come up once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. The soldiers were interviewed separately. They weren't cueing each other, but the same word, it leapt to mind for one soldier after another. And the context was this: one soldier after another. Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. There were no battles. There was no fighting. There was no tangling with the foe. But Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. One soldier said, "This was firepower such as I had never known. There were blasts all the time. The earth was constantly shaking." Another soldier said, "On the ground you hear these thunderous blasts all day long. I mean, not just tank shelling, which was a tune we'd long gotten used to, but blasts that actually rock the outpost. To the extent that some of us were ordered out of the house we were quartered in for fear it would collapse." The Israeli soldiers commandeered Palestinian homes. They're firing into the horizon. but the insane amounts of firepower are causing the ground underneath their feet to quake. So what did happen in Gaza? Actually, the Israeli soldiers came up with the most telling metaphors. One soldier said, "It was like hunting season had begun. Sometimes it reminded me of a PlayStation computer game." Another soldier said, "You felt like a child playing around with a magnifying glass, burning up ants." You felt like a child with a magnifying glass, burning up ants. I was a kid once. I had my magnifying glass. I can still see now in my mind's eye, focusing the rays of the sun on the ant hills, turning the ants into crispy critters. I'm not proud of it, but I don't suffer and didn't suffer then under the delusion that I was engaged in a war with the ants. In fact, the metaphor was remarkably apt. One of Israel's tools of the trade is its promiscuous use of white phosphorus. I first got involved publicly on the Israel-Palestine conflict in June 1982 when Israel invaded Lebanon. And I remember even back then Israel's use of white phosphorus. But I never paid much attention to the fine print and what it was. It had a sinister sounding name, but I didn't go much further. This time around, however, Human Rights Watch, it put out a report. It was called Rain of Fire, and it went on at some length on what white phosphorus really is. White phosphorus, it reaches a temperature of 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. As Oprah would say, try wrapping your mind around that. What did Israel do with the white phosphorus? Well, Human Rights Watch said that Israel repeatedly exploded white phosphorus munitions in the air over populated areas, killing and injuring civilians and damaging civilian structures. It dropped the white phosphorus on a school, a marketplace, a humanitarian aid warehouse. It dropped the white phosphorus on 2 hospitals, Al-Wafa Hospital and Al-Quds Hospital. Human Rights Watch says the hospitals were clearly marked and it does not appear to have been fighting in that immediate area. By the end of the 22 days, 1,400 Palestinians had been killed. Between 1,000 and 1,200 were civilians, 5/7 to 4/5. On the Israeli side, 13 Israelis were killed, 3 civilians, 10 combatants. Of the 10 combatants, half were killed by other Israelis by accident, friendly fire. So for every 100 Palestinians killed, 1 Israeli was killed. For every 400 Palestinian civilians killed, 1 Israeli civilian was killed. That's evidently the most egregious crimes, or the allegations of the most egregious crimes it committed. So Israel damaged or destroyed 29 ambulances. It damaged or destroyed half of Gaza's 122 health facilities, including 15 hospitals. But Israel said, you have to understand, Hamas militants were taking refuge in those hospitals. Well, numerous human rights organizations investigated the claim, and they all reached the same conclusion. There's just no evidence that Hamas militants were using hospitals as refuge. But Israel said, you have to understand, Hamas is using the ambulances to transport militants and transport weapons. All the human rights organizations invested that allegation, and they came to the same conclusion. There's just no evidence to support it. In fact, Israel's own ambulatory service, Magen David Adom, it testified, now I'm quoting, there was no use of Palestinian ambulances for the transport of weapons or ammunition. It just never happened. Israel destroyed 30 mosques in Gaza, and it damaged 15 more.